us pray. Almighty God, who in thy infinite wisdom and providential goodness has appointed the offices of rulers and councils for the welfare of society and the just government of man, we beseech thee to behold with thy abundant favor us thy servants whom thou hast been pleased to call to the performance of such important trust in this our island. Let thy blessing descend upon us, hearing assembly gathered, and grant that we may, as in thy presence, treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberations in so just and faithful a manner as to promote thy honor and glory, and to advance the good of those whose interest thou hast committed to our charge. All which we seek in thy name, and for the sake of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. You may
Please be seated. Motion for the approval of the other paper as circulated.
Madam President, I rise to move a motion for the approval of the order paper as circulated.
Madam President, good morning. I rise to support the motion.
The question is that the order paper as circulated be approved. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Messages from the Deputy Governor General.
There are no messages.
Announcements by the President.
Good morning, honorable members. Good morning. I would just wish to make one announcement, or rather a notice or reminder. The rules require that members who are absent from the House provide notice to the President through the clerk of the intended absence. And I just wanted to remind members of that for this and for future sittings. Thank you.
Papers to be laid. Statements by ministers.
Good morning, Madam President, members on this side, members on the opposition, and all else who are here in this honorable House. I rise just to make a brief statement under statements by ministers. And Madam President, of course you know that, and the House would know, and all who are listening and viewing would know that I'm charged with the responsibilities of various portfolios. And one of the portfolios is culture. I just want to make a brief statement with regards to Culturama 50. Of course, we are all aware that we had a very successful festival for 49. That is earlier this year, July, August. And of course, to the run-up to the festival and during the festival, I'm sure all who would have been glued to their radios and their televisions, those who would have been following online, would recall that we have been saying for quite some time that next year we celebrate the 50th anniversary of the festival, which is indeed a milestone. And to celebrate this milestone, we are preparing. We would have started to prepare even during the course of Culturama 49. And because we decided we wanted to start so early with our preparation, we would have launched the slogan competition during the festival for 49. And I am pleased to report that we do have a winner, and so we can now begin to market very vigorously next year's festival. I am pleased to announce to this honorable House that the winning slogan is Celebrating Culture, Embracing History. It's Culturama 50. Now, the winning slogan was penned by Ms. Carmel Allen, and that slogan was chosen from 292 entries that were accepted between the period July the 27th until September the 30th, 2023. I want to take this opportunity to congratulate Ms. Allen on penning the winning slogan. And I also want to thank all those who would have participated in the slogan competition. Every year we get a number of slogans, and of course persons are always very creative in terms of what they put pen to paper and come up with for their slogans. And I want to congratulate Ms. Allen and once again thank all who would have taken part. For Ms. Allen, the person who penned the winning slogan, she will receive a cash prize of $500, which of course I would have introduced when I became the Minister of Culture in 2017. And she will also receive 2 complimentary passes to all Culturama 50 events, as well as a plaque. Now, Culturama 50, our milestone event, will take place from July the 25th until August the 6th, 2024. And the reason why I wanted to speak to Culturama 50 today is because Culturama 50 has been billed as a homecoming event. And I wanted specifically to speak to members of the Nevisian community and other persons in the diaspora. We did have a homecoming for Culturama 40. It was a huge success, and we're expecting an even bigger success. We're expecting a massive success for Culturama 50. And ever since we would have billed it as a homecoming, the interest has been increasing, especially with our Nevisians who are living in the diaspora. Persons who were here for Culturama 50, those who I would have gotten the chance to speak to, all promised that they will be back for next year, and they're bringing many other persons with them. And so I want to remind persons in the diaspora, and of course this is not just for Nevisians, but for visitors who will be thinking of coming to Culturama next year, we are reminding you that you ought to book your tickets early. You ought to ensure that you reserve your vacation early, because I'm assuming that persons who will be coming will not just be coming for a weekend, but will come for the entire festival, since it is a homecoming and it's a milestone. We are asking you as well to try to reserve your accommodation. For those of you who do not have accommodation, those of you who do not have a house here, those of you who may not have relatives who have the accommodation for you, we're asking you to start booking your accommodation early. And the reason why I'm saying that, the reason why I'm sounding this warning, is because many persons have already been booking their accommodation. I could recall a couple of weeks ago, just as Culturama 49 was finished, I received a call from a young man, and he said, I have several relatives from overseas, and they want to have an idea as to what is the exact date, because they want to start booking their accommodation. Persons have already been booking their accommodation. Only last week I spoke to someone, and they said that one car rental has already had all of their vehicles reserved for Culturama 50. We do not want people to come to Nevis and be disappointed in any way. We want you, when you come, that you have whatever amenities you want. If you want a car rental, book in advance and start booking now. Start booking accommodation. I believe, Madam President, that based on the enthusiasm that is already out there, based on the response that we have already been getting, that we will have record numbers of visitors to the island of Nevis. And so we are also looking at persons coming who cannot get accommodation on Nevis and will be able to stay on St. Kitts as well. When we have music festival in St. Kitts, persons come to Nevis and they stay in Nevis and they travel back and forth. We know, of course, that the water taxi facility is there, the Charlestown Pier is here, and travel between St. Kitts and Nevis is now very seamless. And there are a lot of options for you in terms of ferry operators. And so, if persons want to come to Nevis, those of you who are listening and viewing from overseas, and you cannot get accommodation on Nevis, you can get accommodation on St. Kitts. The Park Hyatt is just 7 minutes away from Nevis. 7 minutes away. Park Hyatt is actually closer to Nevis than Bastille. And so, that is an option for you. The Marriott is there, other hotels are there. And so if you cannot get your accommodation on the island of Nevis, that does not mean that you should not come and experience what promises to be the best Culturama experience ever. And so once again, I'm sounding the warning to persons who are overseas: book your ticket early, reserve your accommodation early, reserve your car rental early. And I'm also saying as well to some of our homeowners, those of you who may have space in your house, you may be able to make $1 because persons may be able to come and say, well, I want a room. Or if you have a basement that can be rented out, persons may say, I want a room. And so it's an opportunity for us here on the island of Nevis, and it's an opportunity to make a little bit of additional money for many persons. We believe, as I said, that it will be a memorable occasion, and so we're encouraging all of our nationals living overseas, to get yourselves here for what promises to be an amazing festival. And while I speak about Culturama as well, I just wanted to remind persons who are residing here that registration is now open for our major shows, the Miss Culture Swimwear, the Mr. Cool, and persons have already been showing an interest. And I believe that because of the interest, we may even have to have an elimination process. But the registration process is open. You can go in or contact or go online and make your registration with the Culturama Secretariat. One other quick thing I wanted to say, Madam President, before I take my seat. I am the Minister of Agriculture, and World Food Day 2023 was observed this year under the theme, Water is Life, Water is Food, Leave No One Behind. There were a number of activities planned for a week. Unfortunately, we had to postpone one of the events because of the weather. But I just wanted to say here, I just wanted to place on record how impressed I was. Because during the week, we had a visit to the primary schools. We are having a primary school agriculture competition, a garden competition. And Madam President, I was totally impressed with what I see happening in our primary schools. I think almost all of the primary schools are part of the competition, and I was really blown away with how creative, how involved the students and the teachers are in agriculture, and I think this augurs well for our agriculture industry. It augurs well for food security and food sovereignty here on the island of Nevis. So I want to take this opportunity to commend the Department and the Ministry of Agriculture for organizing this competition, and commend very highly all of the schools who are taking part, and how impressed I was with their involvement. May it please you, Madam President.
Yes, I recognize the member for Nevis 1.
Madam President, good morning once again. And good morning to members on this side of the House, to the member opposite, to persons in the gallery, and to those who are listening and viewing this sitting of our Parliament. Madam President, I wish to use a few moments to make a brief statement as per the order paper. And I wish to do so, Madam President, in my capacity as the Minister with responsibility for water here on the island of Nevis. I am happy, Madam President, to advise this Honourable House that on the 1st of November, we would have invited 5 drillers to provide for us some costing to do some drilling here on the island of Nevis. And we are targeting, Madam President, over 2.5 million gallons of water. Madam President, I want to backtrack a bit, that we would have sought the services of BRAC Consulting, a company who would have done some geotechnical, geological survey on the island of Nevis over a decade ago. And we felt, Madam President, that it was important to update that information to increase the probability of ensuring that we were able to have more updated data to do our water drilling. And that report, Madam President, was provided to us in August of 2023. Hence, we would have used that data to prepare a bid document and invite these 5 drillers. We would have invited Water and Oil Well Services Company Limited out of Trinidad and Tobago. We would have also invited Jamaica Wells from Jamaica. We invited, Madam President, EXO4 from St. Martin. We also, Madam President, reached out to H. Mario Williams on our sister island of St. Kitts. And finally, the 5th driller who we have reached out to is Mark Zyngen-Foss. Hope I get that last name correct, of Zyngen-Foss Drilling Incorporated in the United States, Madam President. We are hoping, Madam President, that they will be able to return their tender documents by the 30th of November, which is the deadline for submission. And we have asked them, Madam President, to be able to show us in their document that they can be mobilized by the 1st of February on 2024. Because we are hoping that by the end of the 2nd quarter in 2024, that drilling exercise could be completed. We will be starting, Madam President, with 3 wells initially. The first will be at Stony Hill, the second at Braziers, and the third at Dason's Estate. And I want to pause here, Madam President, and to thank the various landowners, because we would have reached out to the various landowners and they have consented and given us their consent to do the necessary drilling and to utilize the various portions of their land. So I really want to thank the various landowners, Madam President. As I said, we are thinking in the initial stage to do approximately 3 wells, but we are hoping, Madam President, to do up to 6 wells in this exercise. Madam President, we have estimated that this project will cost upwards of $5 million. And I want to say to the people of Nevis that it is becoming extremely challenging to ensure that we have our capacity to provide the necessary water supply on the island of Nevis. It's becoming very challenging for a number of reasons, Madam President. Many of our wells have long passed their useful life, many of them. And we have had, Madam President, to have extended pumping of those wells. We also, Madam President, have seen the rapid increase of everything to do with water. Our water meters the prices have escalated since COVID. Our stationery, our pipes, our fittings, our motors, all have increased exponentially, Madam President. And we are looking, Madam President, we are really looking at a possible increase in 2024 of our water rates. I'm saying it because we will have to decide on that very shortly, Madam President, as we are aware the budget discussion is ongoing. But I want to say to the people of Nevis that in 2024, there is serious consideration for the increase of our water rates. We will have to outlay over $5 million on this drilling project. all of our supplies have increased, Madam President, and we want to make sure that we can continue to have a stable and adequate supply of water for the people of Nevis. So I thought, Madam President, I would advise the people of Nevis as to where we are in terms of our water exploration and the consideration, Madam President, for water rate increase in 2024. Madam President, I want to encourage the people of Nevis to ensure that they do their civic duties and ensure that they can pay their water bills on time and in full. Let me make that appeal again. I want to encourage the people of Nevis to please ensure that you pay your water bill on time and in full, in an effort to ensure that we can have the necessary resources to provide this very important commodity to the people of Nevis. Now, that is one part of the equation, Madam President, the supply of potable water for the island of Nevis. But this water drilling project is also extremely important for the geothermal project, Madam President. I am told that the exploration wells for the geothermal project will need a significant volume of water for a number of months. And we want to ensure, Madam President, that when that drilling exploration for our geothermal project gets on stream, the Nevis Water Department wants to be in a position to ensure that we can provide that water for the geothermal exploration that we are hoping that will come on stream in 2024. Madam President, I want to switch very quickly to disaster management. I also have oversight for disaster management here on the island of Nevis. And Madam President, I believe that we are all aware that in the last few weeks we have been threatened by Hurricane Tammy, and recently we have seen some significant rainfall here on the island of Nevis. And Madam President, I believe that the island of Nevis, in my mind, stood up reasonably well to the onslaught of the volume of rainfall. We have seen, Madam President, because of the rapid intensity of that rainfall, we have seen some overflooding of some of our bridges. We have seen topping over of the bridge there by Powell near the Charleston Secondary School. We have seen the topping over of the Nisbet Plantation Bridge, the Camps River Bridge next to ex-petrol gas station. And Madam President, some have said that this was a 100-year event because of the volume of rainfall that we have had in a very short period of time. But we recognize, Madam President, that these 100-year events are now happening every 5 or 10 years. It means, therefore, Madam President, that we have to build much more resilient. And we have to make sure, Madam President, that our infrastructure is such that we can withstand this kind of onslaught of Mother Nature, Madam President. Will we be able to do so entirely? I think not, because Mother Nature, Madam President, is a force of its own that we do not have any control over. We can just try and mitigate and protect against it as much as possible. We have received, Madam President, a significant volume of pictures and videos, and I want to thank the general public for the information that they have provided over the last few weeks, because that information will help us to look at our forward planning in terms of the designs of our various roadways and bridges and culverts, Madam President. It also highlights, Madam President, that there are some areas that we will have to redouble our efforts to ensure that we put in place some improved drainage. I have seen some water in the area of my good friend, Mr. the Pierce of Education, going down that road. And Madam President, I believe that it would have almost taken a boat to get out of that area because of the volume of water. And we have seen number of videos throughout Nevis. It is good information, it is good data, and I want to ask the general public to continue to provide us with whatever information that they have on the recent flooding. We would have seen, Madam President, some areas of minimal damage. We had some washed out on the Pump Road. We have seen some washed out up in Rollins. And I believe, Madam President, that those were two areas that were under construction. Let me make that very clear. Those two areas that we saw, the significant washed out, were areas that were under construction. Our road network itself would have stand up reasonably well. And I want to thank the various engineers and supervisors who would have oversaw those projects, Madam President. Madam President, on staying with disaster, on Saturday evening we saw at the Cultural Village a gospel concert. Now some people may ask, why is disaster hosting gospel concert? You see, Madam President, that is the creativity, I think, of the good folks there at the disaster management. They would have partnered with the Ministry of Community Development to try and get out to the general public the various procedures, Madam President, as it regards to disaster management and getting out the necessary information. The theme for the gospel concert, Madam President, was resilience building a safer community through gospel music. And I want to say, Madam President, that I thought that the presentation, separate and apart from the gospel music itself, there were many public service announcements that gave some guidance, Madam President, to how our community can protect themselves and prepare themselves in the event of a disaster. We would have seen, Madam President, here on the island, our guest artist, Samuel Midas from Guyana, and from our neighboring island, M1. We also had Pastor Webb from St. Kitts, and I thought for a moment, I don't know if Minister Leibel saw that performance, Pastor Webb. I almost for a moment thought that I was at a Soca Monarch competition. You see what I mean, Madam? You see what I mean, Madam President? The member for number 3 saying that he's from Gingerland. So I guess that that's where he gets that high energy, high level of performance from. And I thought it was very remarkable, Madam President. But I thought it was a good gospel concert, Madam President, mixed in with public service announcement to give our people the necessary information as it regards to disaster preparedness and disaster management. I want to thank the hard-working staff there at the disaster management in collaboration with our community development, the staff there at the community development, for ensuring that this event took place. It was postponed because of inclement weather, but I want to thank them for ensuring that it actually came off, Madam President. I want to thank the various artists. We also had many local artists. And perhaps it is an event that we can twin with something like health and education, because I thought that the synergy, Madam President, between disaster and gospel music was an interesting one. And I believe that the organizers and the planners was able to achieve what they wanted to achieve by getting the necessary public service announcement out to the general public. Madam President, I did say that I will be very brief, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to make my brief statement on the statement by ministers. Thank you, Madam President, and may it please.
Thank you. Recognize the member for Nevis too.
Good morning, Madam President, and good morning to colleagues on this side and on the opposition benches. Madam President, I rise to make a brief intervention under this head of statements by ministers to speak for just a few moments on the fire that we had at the Four Seasons Resort. I think all of us were alarmed when we heard the news circulating last Tuesday evening that the Four Seasons Resort was on fire. We saw the videos that started circulating, as is now the norm, on social media, and I believe that there was considerable alarm raised as, of course, Madam President, our people were concerned as to what the implications might be for the island if one of the most important employers on the island were to go up in smoke. Immediately, as again appears to be the norm, the rumors started to spread and all manner of things were being said. I would like from this rostrum to say that that fire originated, it appears, based on the investigation that has been conducted both by Four Seasons and by our local police and fire officials, that fire originated at a pro shop and thereafter engulfed the, let me go back. It originated at the gym, fitness center, and thereafter engulfed the pro shop as well. Those two facilities, as we know, are stacked one on the other, one on top of the other, and I believe that those who know the layout at the Four Seasons would know that those two are removed some distance away from the main building and the rooms and villas. The report that I received both from our fire department and from the Four Seasons itself is that the firefighters performed admirably, that they would have responded with one of the two tenders from Charlestown, and then thereafter that would have been assisted by the fire tender from Newcastle, and that collectively, working alongside Four Seasons staff and I gather some private water trucks that were also brought into action, they pumped water from some of the ponds at Four Seasons and were able to contain that fire. The report that I saw suggested that our firefighters responded just around 8 p.m. or thereafter, shortly thereafter, and did not leave the scene until after 4 o'clock the following morning, when the fire had been completely contained. Now, of note, Madam President, is that the gym, fitness center, and the pro shop are within almost touching distance of the spa facility at Four Seasons. I believe that there is no more than 20 feet or so separating the two. And I think that it is a matter of some satisfaction. And from this position, I want to extend my heartiest congratulations to our firefighters that the spa did not receive any damage whatsoever, notwithstanding the seriousness of this fire. So they were able to contain the fire to that area of the fitness center and the pro shop, and the result, Madam President, is that the hotel is back in full operation. In fact, I think I would want to read into the record the formal statement issued by Four Seasons Resort. And they said this: on the evening of Tuesday, October 31st, 2023, there was a fire at the Pro Shop and Fitness Center at Four Seasons Resort, Nevis. The safety and well-being of our employees and guests is our top priority, and we are relieved to share that everyone is safe and unharmed. We want to extend our gratitude to our dedicated staff, as well as the local fire department and emergency services teams for their rapid response and efficient handling of the situation. As we assess the extent of the damages and develop a plan for the restoration of the facilities, the resort remains open and welcoming guests. We would like to express our gratitude to our guests, employees, partners, and the Nevis community for their support during this challenging time. We have since had a further update from the Four Seasons in a note sent to me, Madam President, and I quote, "With full support of the resort, local authorities conducted an investigation of the recent fire at the fitness center and pro shop at Four Seasons Resort Nevis and determined the cause was related to a malfunctioning piece of equipment. The property engineering team, alongside external experts, are now reviewing mechanical and electrical equipment on property as they look to further enhance already stringent engineering and maintenance policies and procedures. Today, they are pleased to announce that the resort has been able to successfully relocate impacted fitness services. Beginning Saturday, November 4th, that is last Saturday, SureFit, a new and rebranded fitness center, will be conveniently located next to the Calypso pool. As a result, the kids' club will be temporarily relocated next to the gift shop. Golf, tennis, pickleball, and spa offerings are fully operational and available for guest employment. Four Seasons Resort Nevis would like to once again express its gratitude to its employees, guests, homeowners, partners, local officials, and the Nevis community for their ongoing support. They look forward to welcoming everyone back to their beautiful resort. Madam President, I thought it was important for me to make this statement because for this hotel to have had a fire on Tuesday evening, and by Saturday, the gym was already back in a different location, now rebranded as SureFit, SHOREFIT, because it is on the shore now, it's on the ocean. And for them to have been able, Madam President, to relocate the necessary services without there being any interruption to any significant degree, I think it's a matter that speaks not only to their resilience, but to the resilience of the Nevisian people. And I want to say that because too often, we get the constant negativity that permeates the atmosphere. And we forget that this little island, Madam President, is all that we have. And that this little island has provided for all of us. And that this little island ought at every opportunity to be celebrated. And so I am delighted when I can see the Four Seasons' response is to say how satisfied they are with our firefighting team and our emergency response team, and how efficiently they handled the fire. I am happy when I can see that through the hard work of Nevisians, because at the end of the day, yes, we may say Four Seasons and their owners have deep pockets, but it is the Nevisian people who are working there. And they're the ones, Madam President, who would have ensured that the necessary was done so that just fire Tuesday night, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, by Saturday morning, Four Seasons is back with the gym and everything else. I believe that that is remarkable. I go back to what I said, that the spa is next to this raging inferno, and our firefighters were able to ensure that the spa was unscathed. I believe that is remarkable. Another bit of information, which I think the public and the House ought to know, is that while the fire was raging, Four Seasons workers, including my friend, I hope he doesn't mind me calling his name, Mackie, France, well known to all of us. They were busy removing all the golf carts, golf equipment, golf clubs from the affected area. The result is that even though that single structure, downstairs and upstairs, would have been destroyed, Four Seasons could, as of Saturday, announce that their full golf and other activities are now fully available because, again, of the work of the Nevision people. And I want to praise Four Seasons for their response and their partnership to this island over all these decades, but also praise our people, because it is our people who rescued those golf carts and golf equipment so that they could have golf again available to their guests. It is our people who have worked to relocate the affected areas so that the services down there are not interrupted. And it is our people who will help to ensure that the hotel is rebuilt in the context of the affected areas. I have toured property, and I did not, my colleagues will also have toured, some of them, to see for themselves. I went the morning after. And, Madam President, we have pledged the government's full commitment and partnership in ensuring that all is restored in the shortest possible time. I believe I would want to end this short statement by indicating that even as we are here now, the Four Seasons is sold out. That they were forced to put out a notice to say that they will not be able to handle any outside guests because they are 100% sold out. And I am delighted, Madam President, that this mishap from last Tuesday has not impacted in any way the services and the quality that this resort is known for. And so people have come. They were, of course, notified that there was this problem. They have come anyway, because we say Nevis nice, and people want to come to experience the niceness that is Nevis. I know that this is not the occasion for anything controversial, but I wish sometime that all of us would recognize that Nevis nice. Because the negativity that permeates the atmosphere constantly sometimes gives the impression that there are two Nevises. There's one that everybody's clamoring to come to and to see and to experience. And there's another one which I don't resemble, which I don't identify, which I can't recognize, and which doesn't resemble anything at all like what we who live here are accustomed to. And so I wanted to make this statement because of the need to be clear as to what happened, the need to be clear in terms of the response of our firefighters, the response of our emergency teams, and the fact that Four Seasons itself has singled them out for praise and commendation based on how well they handled the situation. It is a combination of efficient and effective response and the hard work of our Nevision people at that resort that allows me to stand here today comforted in saying that, notwithstanding what could have been a tremendous tragedy for all of us here on the island of Nevis, that tragedy, through the grace of God and through the work of our firefighters and the work of our Nevision people at the Four Seasons, that tragedy has been averted. And Four Seasons is now back in business. We are hopeful that they will have the bumper season that they're predicting. And I am happy that none of us in this house could go down there today, tomorrow, or the next few days because they're sold out. I am happy that none of us, all of you who want to go down for dinner, don't go. You will not be allowed in. It is sold out. I know those words bother some people, but I'm happy to stay here and say they are sold out. That means every room every crook and cranny is full. That is good for us. Good for the government, good for the workers, good for the vendors, good for the restaurants, good for the taxi drivers, good for the water taxi operators, good for the fishermen, good for the farmers. It is good for all of us. That Four Seasons, despite the near tragedy of last Tuesday, is sold out. May it please you, Madam President.
Personal explanations. Introduction of bill and first reading.
Madam President, I rise to have introduced and read the first time in this Honourable House a bill shortly entitled Integrity in Public Life Amendment Bill 2023. This, of course, Madam President, being the first reading, the intention would be that the bill then would go for public consultation.
Madam President, I rise to second the motion.
Thank you. The question is that the bill shortly entitled the Integrity in Public Life Amendment Bill 2023 be read a first time. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Integrity in Public Life Ordinance Cap 1.02 and for matters related thereto or connected therewith.
The bill shortly entitled the Integrity in Public Life Amendment Bill 2023 has been read a first time.
Adjournment.
Madam President, I rise on the adjournment. Just to briefly say two things. I want to take this opportunity to wish our young swimmers the very best. I understand there's a contingent of 20 swimmers from the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, the majority of them, I believe, from Nevis, who will be journeying to St. Lucia to take part in the OECS swimming competition there. I know that they would have traveled, a couple of them would have traveled to St. Lucia for the first time last year. And now a much bigger contingent will be traveling to St. Lucia this year. And I must give kudos and commendation to our young swimmers and, of course, to our coaches. I believe that swimming is going places on the island of Nevis. I am very proud that when I was the Minister of Sports, we would have launched a program called Swim to Win. And since then, swimming has taken off on the island of Nevis. When our young people do well, when our young people excel, we should at all times try to commend them. And I saw a number of our young swimmers on show on Saturday at Wali. The Nevis Aquatic and Sailing Center hosted an activity there, SwimFest Fall 2023. I was part of that event. I was there in the capacity as an announcer. And I was really impressed with the ability that I saw in the water from our young swimmers on Nevis. I really, really want to commend them very, very highly. And as I said, in particular, the coaches have been working overtime. They've been doing a tremendous job. So commendation to the coaches, commendation to those who would have made the team to travel to St. Lucia, and I want to wish them every success. So congratulations to all of you who took part in that SwimFest on Saturday. Special congratulations to the Bring It Swim team for winning the championship trophy. But overall, it was an excellent event. Commendation to the Nevis Aquatic and Sailing Center, and high commendation to all of the swimmers. And the other thing I just wanted to mention briefly, I want to extend some congratulations as well, Madam President, to 3 persons who would have recently received their doctorate. Dr. Curtis Clark, who I would have been fortunate to work with as the, when I was in charge of youth, the Department of Youth, and I want to commend her. She's now a doctor of psychology, I think, and she would have graduated in the US very recently, and so I want to extend heartiest congratulations to Dr. Curtis Clark. I also want to take this opportunity to extend congratulations as well to two of our recent doctors of medicine, Dr. Aljari Brown and Dr. Romario Daniel. Both from Brown Hill. Yes, I know you would have said that. I want to especially say how proud I am of Dr. Daniel, because Dr. Daniel would have been part of a program that was initiated by my club, the Empire Sports Club, in Hanley's Road, the Boys Together for Change, and I believe part of that grounding that Dr. Daniel had, being a part of that program, spearheaded by my club, me being the president, I believe that would have gone a long way in instilling in him the values that would have taken him over the line to become a doctor. So congratulations to Dr. Daniel, Dr. Brown, and Dr. Clark. May it please you, Madam President.
Thank you. Recognize the member for Nevis 4.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning to all present in the gallery and here in this honorable house. Madam President, I am pleased to have heard about the advance and the progress being made so far with regards to the Culturama activities. I think Culturama is something that we all look forward to. And so I do hope that everything goes well and that we can have a successful Culturama 50 celebration. I'm also pleased, Madam President, to hear about the drilling to be commenced on November 1st. I'm not pleased, though, about the process. I stand corrected, the process. Madam President, I am not pleased, though, about the possible increase for water, primarily because
Honourable Member, on the adjournment, we're not permitted to raise controversial matters.
Yeah.
And given that it was indicated that this may come up in budget debates, perhaps that would be the appropriate time to discuss it. But for the adjournment, we leave controversial matters out of the discourse.
Well, I was given commendation, so, but I
The
appreciate.
commendations seem to have ended.
Okay, so let me also please, Madam President, if I may, also extend appreciation to the Four Seasons Resort family and the hard work that they would have put in to ensure that Nevis's premier hotel remains open during this festive season, considering that most persons have been looking forward, coming out of COVID-19, to an opportunity to get back on track. Madam President, I would like to say that I had an opportunity to meet with the general manager at Four Seasons and was quite pleased when he was able to explain that notwithstanding what may have appeared to be a major incident, that he was confident that people would continue to come, as was expressed here, because of the natural charm and hospitality displayed by the people of Nevis. Madam President, I would pause here, notwithstanding that I would just want to say that the Four Seasons Resort, we recognize the significance of that establishment to the economy of Nevis. And as we plan going forward, I would just like us to be aware that we're not only vulnerable to the impacts of natural disasters, but we're also vulnerable to the impacts of tourism that tourism can bring. And so I think this is an opportunity for us to recognize that it is time for us to look at diversifying our economy so that we do not continue to be so dependent on a single establishment. And so to all who have worked hard to make sure that it's on track, I would just like to extend my appreciation as well. I did assure the General Manager that although in opposition, whatever I can do as leader of the Nevis Reformation Party, that I am willing and able to do so. I would also like to extend congratulations to Ms. Clark, well, Dr. Clark, Dr. Brown, and Dr. Daniel on their accomplishments. And I also wish to say that as we go into the festive season, I wish all of us, all of Nevis, a very happy season. May it please you.
Thank you.
Madam President, I rise in the adjournment to join my colleagues in expressing my warm congratulations to Dr. Curtis Clark, personal friend of mine, and a woman of tremendous ability, intellectual and otherwise, for her recent achievement of her PhD and graduating and to be named Doctor of Philosophy, you say, or Doctor of Psychology, Doctor of Psychology. I am exceedingly proud of her and would want to use this rostrum to congratulate her. Let me also use this opportunity to congratulate both Dr. Romario Daniel and Dr. Ajari Brown, both of whom would have graduated just this weekend from the University of the West Indies Mona campus with their necessary qualifications in medicine. These two are particularly special to me because as a young boy growing up in Brownhill, Ajari's father, the man who became known as King Astro, was my brother then. He remains my brother today. And Roxanne Brooks, the mother of Romario, Roxy as we call her, was my sister then. She remains my sister today. And we all grew up together. And I believe that the achievements thus far of these two young men, in an era when we continue to hear that our young people are going astray, we ought to celebrate them publicly, privately, and in every crook and cranny of this island, on every occasion that we get, we ought to celebrate them. Coming from Brownhill, I'm particularly pleased. You know why, Madam President? Because there was a time when Brownhill was looked down upon. I say so because it's true. We were referred to as the ghetto. And the idea seemed to have been that nothing good comes out of Brownhill. It is not true, of course, because whether it's sports, culture, or otherwise, Brownhill has excelled. But when I look at these two youngsters, and I reflect on the journey, I reflect where their parents come from. I remember when Astra was expelled from school, high school. I remember that very well. I hope that's not controversial, that's factual. And here he is today, able to stand with his beautiful wife, Althea, who's from Gingerland, but lives in St. John's. Because all who can move to St. John's. So here he is able to stand with his beautiful wife. In 2023, proudly with his son, who is now Dr. Ajari Brown. I think a lot of times, Madam President, we, even in this island, don't understand how great we are. We take a lot of what happens for granted. And we are quick to criticize without understanding sometimes the journey that people would have taken. I spoke at length yesterday, I pray she don't get upset with me, with Roxanne's aunt, Pam, but who everybody thinks is Roxanne's mom, because Roxanne grew up with Pam in Brownhill. And when I heard the pride, because young Dr. Romario Daniel, her grandson as she called it, is now a doctor. And when I listened to her and she said to me that her only regret is that their grandmother is not alive to witness this day. We have, Madam President, to celebrate our people. Sometimes we get so bogged down with the politics and the confusion that we forget that we have to celebrate our people. I tell people all the time the whole of Nevis was poor. That's not a controversial statement, you know. Even who we used to think had money was poor. They just had more than us. But everybody in Nevis was poor. Some had name, but nothing else. Some had land, but no money in the bank. Everybody was poor. So when we see these youngsters now emerging, and we recognize the sacrifices that must have been made by their parents, their grandparents, their family members, their well-wishers, their communities, to create two youngsters standing tall in Jamaica this weekend. And they're not alone. I want to hasten to say that there's so many others doing great things from this island. Those two are special to me because, as I said, I would have seen them from birth to where they are now, and I would have known the struggle of their parents because it was a shared struggle. Coming out of Brownhill, where they used to say, where the ghetto, I am so pleased and proud that these youngsters have emerged in the way that they are emerging. And I'm hopeful, Madam President, that they will set an example for other young men and other young people. That we will look at them and see this is possible. No matter where we're born, no matter what they say about us, no matter where we come from, that by hard work and application, the world is our oyster and all is possible. The Nevisian people are a great people. We have always been a great people. We have always demonstrated exceptionalism when given the opportunity. Sometimes I feel the only people who can't see our greatness is us ourselves. Are we quick to call down Nevis? Nevisians are great people, and these youngsters are simply demonstrating what we have known for a very long time. And notwithstanding their humble circumstance and the humble circumstance of their parents and their forebears, look at them today. Two brand new doctors for the island of Nevis. Two brand new doctors from Brownhill in the island of Nevis, the great constituency of number 2, St. John's. I am pleased and proud. My heart is full because plenty barefoot we don't walk in Brownhill. Don't worry about that. Brownhill. I claim them because they are Brownhillian. That's why I claim them. And I know the struggle. I understand that struggle. And when people emerge from that crucible, stronger, better, lifting up this island, I believe all of us have an obligation to pay homage and to understand the journey that we have taken. We ought to be inspired, Madam President, by that journey. And that is why I'm so proud of them. I'm proud of you too. Hope that's not controversial. I'm proud of the members on the opposite side. All of us are poor people. Well, at least one member on the opposite side is a poor person. Used to be. That's controversial. I'll stop there.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Proud of everybody. Because we must celebrate Nevis. We must celebrate Nevisianness. We must celebrate exceptionalism among our people. And it irks me when people seem to just be willing to call us down. We are as good as any and better than many. And these youngsters are demonstrating that. We don't sit or talking, by action. And that for me is important. So I join in congratulating them on the adjournment and trust that I wasn't too controversial. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. May we have a move of the adjournment, please?
Madam President, I rise to move the adjournment of this Honourable House, sine die.
Yes.
Madam President, I rise to second the movement.
The question is that this Honourable House be adjourned sine die. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. This Honourable House stands adjourned sine die.